as if fate itself had taken a wrong turn down a broken road. Rain soaked the mud paths, the power was out, and the small house at the edge of the fields glowed faintly with the light of a single oil lamp. Inside that house lived a man who had already lost too much, and who had no idea that caring for a stranger would slowly rebuild his shattered heart. Before this story unfolds any further, take a moment. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of human compassion, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Rashid was a single father from a forgotten village where mornings began with rooster calls and ended with aching bones. His hands were rough from years of farming land that barely gave enough to survive. His wife had died 5 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving behind silence in the house and a daughter who still cried herself to sleep some nights. Rashid never remarried, not because he didn't need companionship, but because grief had turned responsibility into his only language. Every day, he woke before dawn, prepared simple food, helped his daughter get ready for school, and then walked miles to work fields that did not belong to him. Life had taught him endurance, not expectation. On that stormy evening, Rashid heard the sound of a vehicle struggling against mud. Cars rarely came that far, and never at night. When the headlights finally died near the old banyan tree, Rashid stepped outside, rain soaking his thin shirt. What he saw did not make sense at first. A luxury SUV, splattered with dirt, stood helpless, and beside it a man sat in a wheelchair, soaked, pale, and clearly in distress. The driver was gone, likely sent to find help, but hours had passed. The man in the wheelchair was Vikram Malhotra. Though Rashid did not know the name then, he only saw a middle-aged man whose eyes carried both fear and pride, whose legs lay motionless beneath an expensive blanket, and whose body shook not from cold alone but from humiliation. Rashid did not ask questions. He did not calculate risk or reward. He simply pushed the wheelchair through the mud, guided the stranger into his modest home, and wrapped him in warmth the only way he knew how. The house smelled of wood smoke and lentils. Rashid's daughter watched silently from the corner, curiosity mixed with concern. The stranger was placed near the fire, his soaked clothes replaced with dry village garments that looked almost comical on someone so refined. Rashid cooked, cleaned, and stayed awake all night, listening to the rain hammer the roof and the shallow breathing of a man whose world had collapsed long before that night. In the days that followed, the truth slowly emerged. Vikram Malhotra was a billionaire industrialist whose life had been defined by speed, control, and towering ambition. A car accident years ago had left him paralyzed from the waist down. Since then, he had lived surrounded by staff, machines, and walls high enough to keep real emotion out. He had been traveling to inspect land for a new project when the storm forced his convoy to change routes, leading him straight into a world that did not care about money or power. The village had no proper medical facilities. Rashid improvised, learning how to help Vikram move, how to clean wounds, how to prevent bedsores using folded cloth and patience. Each movement was careful, respectful, and slow. Rashid spoke little, but his presence was steady. He never made Vikram feel like a burden, though Vikram felt it deeply within himself. For the first time since his accident, he was fully dependent on someone who expected nothing in return. Life was not easy. Rashid still had to work. He rose earlier, slept less, and carried exhaustion like an extra limb. His daughter helped after school, reading books aloud to Vikram, bringing water, and sometimes just sitting near him. The billionaire who once negotiated deals worth millions now found himself waiting for a child to finish her homework before she could help him turn a page. Humiliation slowly gave way to humility. As weeks passed, something shifted. Vikram began to observe Rashid closely. The way he counted coins before buying flour, the way he hid his pain when his back gave out, the way he smiled for his daughter even on days when hunger followed him like a shadow. Rashid never complained. He never spoke of sacrifice. He simply lived it. For Vikram, this was more shocking than any boardroom betrayal. The village whispered. Some assumed Rashid was being paid secretly. Others thought the stranger would bring trouble. Rashid ignored them all. His only fear was that one day the man would leave, and his daughter would lose another presence she had grown used to. Vikram, on the other hand, feared staying too long. He felt unworthy of the care he received, and yet terrified of returning to a life where everything was polished but empty. One afternoon, Rashid collapsed in the field. Years of neglecting his own health caught up with him. He was carried home by neighbors, unconscious, while Vikram watched helplessly from his wheelchair. For the first time, the roles reversed. Vikram felt panic claw at his chest. This man, who had become his anchor, lay fragile and breakable. When Rashid woke hours later, Vikram's eyes were wet with something he had not allowed himself to feel in years. Recovery was slow. Rashid's body demanded rest he could not afford. That was when Vikram made a decision that would change all their lives. Using a phone signal strong enough only at the edge of the village, he contacted his company, not to demand rescue, but to bring support. Medical staff arrived quietly. Supplies followed. The villagers watched in disbelief as modern care entered their forgotten world. Rashid did not understand at first. He felt ashamed, as if his kindness had been repaid with charity he did not ask for. Vikram sensed this and insisted through actions rather than words. He stayed, he waited, he showed Rashid that accepting help was not weakness, but trust. As Rashid regained strength, Vikram revealed the full truth of his identity. The weight of it nearly crushed Rashid. A billionaire living under his roof, eating his food, sharing his hardships. Rashid feared consequences, feared losing his simple life. But none came. Instead, Vikram offered something unexpected. He proposed building a care center in the village, employing locals, educating children, and ensuring that no one would have to travel miles for basic treatment again. The project began slowly, but with purpose. Rashid was offered a role as supervisor, not out of pity, but because Vikram trusted him. The villagers saw the change, not just in their surroundings, but in Vikram himself. The cold businessman softened. He laughed more, listened longer, and spent evenings under the open sky, watching children play. It was during one such evening that Mira entered the story. She was a visiting physiotherapist assigned to Vikram's care, but her presence brought something else entirely. She saw Rashid not as a poor villager, but as a man of quiet strength. She saw Vikram not as a patient, but as a soul rebuilding itself. And slowly, without announcement or drama, something tender grew between Vikram and Mira, rooted not in pity, but in shared vulnerability. Rashid watched from a distance. His heart carried both joy and ache. He had grown deeply attached to Vikram, not as a benefactor, but as family. The idea of losing him frightened him more than poverty ever had. When Vikram finally announced that he would leave the village to finalize legal matters, Rashid felt the familiar sting of abandonment. On the day of departure, the entire village gathered. The road was repaired, the vehicle ready. Vikram rolled toward Rashid, placed a hand over his weathered one, and stayed there longer than necessary. No words were spoken, but everything was understood. Rashid had given him dignity when he had none. In return, Vikram had given Rashid opportunity, stability, and hope. Months passed. The care center opened. Rashid's daughter attended a proper school. Rashid worked without fear of hunger. Life settled into something resembling peace. Then, one morning, a familiar vehicle returned. Vikram was back, not as a guest, but as a resident. He had chosen to build a home near the fields, close to the man who saved him in ways money never could. The love between Vikram and Mira blossomed quietly, grounded in respect and shared healing. It was not dramatic or loud. It was patient, like Rashid himself. On the day they committed to a life together, Rashid stood beside them, not as staff, not as charity, but as family. Before this story reaches its final breath, please take a moment. If this journey touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness can cross worlds and heal wounds deeper than we see, like the video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement keeps these stories alive. And one special request before the ending, please comment below with one word that describes how this story made you feel. Your words matter. Years later, people would speak of the billionaire who chose a village, and the villager who changed a life. But Rashid never thought of it that way. He believed he had simply opened his door on a rainy night. And sometimes, that is all it takes for unexpected love to find its way in, quietly, permanently, and strong enough to transform everyone it touches.